$263 million. Take a second and really think about that number. That's the figure everyone remembers from the single most expensive transfer in football history, right? Back when Neymar left Barcelona for Paris in 2017. But here's what almost nobody tells you. Barcelona did not just get a giant check for $263 million and happily walk away.
No way. Buried deep inside that one single transfer were massive agent fees, a hefty contract termination bonus, incredibly complex tax structures, and honestly, accounting tricks that would make a Wall Street hedge fund blush. That massive fee you see screaming in the headlines, it's literally the least interesting part of the deal.
So today, in this explainer, we are completely pulling back the curtain on the hidden transfer economy. We're going to see how clubs actually make money from selling players. And by the end of this, you'll finally understand how a club can sell a player for nothing and still profit, and why selling off your own homegrown academy kid is somehow worth more than selling a global superstar.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the fee is a lie, how amortization works. We're going to start by completely killing the biggest myth in football. When you read a headline like, Club X signs player for $100 million, you probably picture a wire transfer, right? Like $100 million leaving one bank account and instantly landing in another? Well, scratch that. That almost never happens.
The reality is, modern transfers are practically always paid in installments. They're usually spread across the entire length of the player's contract. So a £100 million deal might actually just be $20 million a year for 5 years. But here's the thing, it gets way stranger when you look at the accounting side. Clubs use this financial method called amortization. Instead of recording that full fee as one giant painful cost up front, they spread it out evenly across the contract on their official books. So that £100 million signing on a 5-year contract, it only shows up as a $20 million cost each season. This single trick completely explains a decade of football's absolute craziest decisions. Remember when clubs suddenly started handing out 7, 8, or even 9-year contracts? Yeah, that wasn't about loyalty. The longer the contract, the more years you can smear that fee across, meaning the yearly cost on your books dramatically shrinks. The accounting authorities eventually caught on to this, and in 2023, the rules were changed to cap that spreading trick at 5 years, regardless of how long the actual contract is.
Now, you might be wondering, why does this matter for selling players? Well, every player on a club's books has what accountants call a book value. That's simply the part of his transfer fee that hasn't been written off yet. Let's say you buy a player for $100 million on a 5-year deal. After 3 years, you've written off $60 million of that, so his current book value is just $40 million. If you turn around and sell him for $50 million on your official books, that goes down as a £30 million profit, even though in the real world, you just sold him for exactly half of what you initially paid. I mean, 50 minus 40 is 10, right? Boom, a £10 million accounting profit on a player you technically lost money on in the real world. This right here is the secret engine driving the whole transfer economy. Selling players isn't really about the raw cash in the headline. It's entirely about what the sale does to your books. Hold that thought, because it's about to explain the most ruthless trend in the modern game. Moving on to Section 2, the hidden clauses, specifically add-ons and sell-ons. Because guys, that headline fee is literally just one single line in a contract that can run dozens of pages long. The real money, and honestly the real chaos, lives in the fine print. Let's quickly go through the 4 clauses that actually move millions.
First up, add-ons. The fee you hear reported is usually just the guaranteed baseline. Sitting right on top of that is a whole list of bonuses. You know, a chunk of cash if the player makes a certain number of appearances, a bigger chunk if the team qualifies for the Champions League, a little top-up for every international cap, and an absolute jackpot if he wins a major trophy. A supposedly $50 million transfer can quietly balloon up to $62 million with all these add-ons. For instance, when Brighton sold Marc Cucurella to Chelsea, the deal started around $55 million, but could easily rise towards $62 million, all entirely based on those performance triggers.
Second, and honestly, this one is just a beautiful piece of business, is the sell-on clause. When a club sells a player, they can leave a very lucrative string attached, a guaranteed percentage of the next sale. So if that player gets sold again later for a bigger fee, the original club gets a cut. You can actually profit from a sale you're not even part of. The absolute textbook example of this is Kevin De Bruyne. Chelsea sold him to Wolfsburg for around $18 million, and frankly, they looked pretty foolish when he quickly became one of the best players on earth. But Chelsea's lawyers had smartly written in a sell-on clause of roughly 25%. So when Manchester City eventually bought him back for about $55 million, Chelsea quietly pocketed another $10 million for doing absolutely nothing. It's the exact same story with Mohamed Salah. Chelsea sold him to Roma, kept a sell-on slice, and when Roma flipped him to Liverpool for around $37 million, Chelsea quietly collected a check yet again. Smaller clubs literally live on these clauses. Over in the US, the Chicago Fire banked a reported $8 million plus when Aston Villa sold John Duran to Saudi Arabia, years after Chicago had initially sold him. But listen, there's a huge warning attached here. Sell-on clauses cut both ways, and getting it wrong is brutal. Southampton once held a sell-on clause on a very young Gareth Bale, but they were strapped for cash, so they foolishly sold the clause itself for just a few million upfront. Fast forward and Bale moved to Real Madrid for a world record fee, and Southampton, they got absolutely nothing from it. One short-sighted decision and tens of millions vanished into thin air.
Third and fourth are buyback clauses and matching rights. This is when a massive club sells a young, raw talent to a smaller team just to get them some much-needed game time. But they keep the right to buy him back later at a pre-agreed price or to instantly match any offer he receives from elsewhere. It's essentially a safety net. You let someone else take the developmental risk and reserve the VIP option to bring the gem back home if he actually blossoms. So you see, the fee is never really just a fee. It's a baseline fee plus a massive web of options betting on the future.
All right, Section 3, where the money leaks. Let's talk about agents and the players' cut. Up to now, we've focused on what clubs stand to gain. Now let's take a look at where all that money quietly disappears to. Because a massive transfer fee is definitely not the same thing as pure profit. Let's go back to Neymar. That eye-watering $263 million number, that was simply the release clause Barcelona received when Paris triggered it. But I promise you, Neymar's camp didn't walk away empty-handed either. There were reported tens of millions in fees and hidden bonuses directly tied to the player's side of the move. That included a massive windfall connected to his father, who also acts as an agent. On these mega deals, the entourage around the player can earn life-changing sums just for making the signature happen.
Seriously, agent commissions across world football run into the billions every single year. On just one mega transfer, an agent might take a percentage that climbs well into the tens of millions. And then you have the player's own signing-on bonus, his so-called loyalty payments, and the entire tax structure. Things like where the deal is formally registered, how his lucrative image rights are handled, and exactly which country's tax rules apply. The exact same £100 million transfer can net wildly different amounts of real, usable money depending entirely on how clever the lawyers are when they build it. So, next time a club brags, "We made a $50 million profit," you need to ask the real question. Is that profit after paying the agent, clearing the bonuses, settling the tax, and factoring in the book value? Because that is the only number that actually matters. And it's suspiciously the exact one nobody ever puts in the headline. Let's move to Section 4. The accounting game, and exactly why clubs sell their own kids. This is the part that completely explains the most heartbreaking trend in modern football right now. Clubs brutally selling off beloved academy graduates, the kids who literally grew up wearing the club crest. Look, it's not cruelty. It's just cold, hard math.
Remember that book value concept we talked about earlier? A signed player's profit is his sale price minus whatever value is still left on the club's books. But an academy player, he costs the club absolutely nothing in transfer fees. Zero. He has no book value whatsoever. So when you sell him, every single penny of that transfer fee counts as profit on the ledger. In the industry, they literally call it pure profit. It perfectly explains that crazy idea we mentioned earlier, why you can sell a player who essentially cost you nothing and still walk away with a massive balance sheet saving profit.
And why does this matter so incredibly much right now? It all comes down to the financial rules. Over in the Premier League, they're known as Profit and Sustainability Rules, or PSR for short. The big headline limit here is that clubs can only lose so much money over a rolling 3-year window, which is currently capped at around £105 million. If you blow past that limit, you face actual points deductions. We're talking real, devastating punishment right there on the pitch.
Once you see this financial game, you really can't unsee it. The very next time your favorite club sells a beloved homegrown player right at the end of late June for a fee that feels totally random, you'll know exactly what just happened behind closed doors. That wasn't a football decision. That was entirely a balance sheet decision.
And that brings us to Section 5, the business model. Here is exactly how clubs sell to survive. Everything we've covered so far merges into one master strategy that has quietly become the absolute smartest business in all of football, the dedicated selling club. These specific clubs, they are actually out there trying to win the biggest trophies. Instead, they run a highly tuned trading operation. Step 1, buy undervalued, unknown talent for cheap. Step 2, develop them intensely. Step 3, sell them at a massive, massive markup.
and then just rinse and repeat forever. Brighton is the absolute masterclass in this right now. Check this out. They bought Mark Cucurella for around $15 million and sold him to Chelsea for over $55 million. Then they snagged Moises Caicedo for under $5 million and flipped him also to Chelsea for a British record fee of around $115 million. Across just 2 seasons, Brighton generated well over $350 million in player sales. That turned into a profit north of £160 million, all while spending just a tiny fraction of what their massive, desperate rivals did. But long before Brighton was doing it, there was Benfica in Portugal. They are arguably the original talent factory. They've sold a literal conveyor belt of superstars directly to Europe's giants. We're talking Angel Di Maria, Ederson, David Luiz, Darwin Núñez, Enzo Fernandez. Their core business model isn't actually to win the Champions League. Their goal is to be the premier supplier to the superclubs that do try to win it. They make their real money in the transfer market, not the trophy cabinet. And honestly, this is the part that breaks a lot of traditional fans' brains. These so-called smaller clubs are frequently run way better than the giants. Because while billionaire-owned superclubs are out there torching money just chasing glory, these smart trading clubs treat their players like a high-yield investment portfolio, banking massive profit year after year. In this hidden transfer economy, the team that never quite wins the league can absolutely be the one that decisively wins the spreadsheet.
So let's bring it all home. That eye-catching transfer fee in the headline, it's largely a fiction. It's paid in slow installments, it's smeared across years on the accounting books, and it is absolutely stuffed with hidden clauses. Clubs are out there profiting from sell-on slices on players they don't even own anymore. Tricky agents and complex tax structures siphon off millions before anyone can even count the profit. Local academy kids get sold off, not despite being loved by the fans, but precisely because they're worth so much more on paper. And the smartest clubs in the entire world have turned all of this chaos into a ruthless business model that literally prints money without ever needing to lift a trophy. Football might look like a beautiful game played on grass, but underneath, it's a cutthroat game played on balance sheets, and now you know how to read both. If this explainer completely changed how you're going to view the next big transfer headline, well then that was the whole point.
So, here's a question I want to leave you with. During the very next transfer window, when you inevitably see a shock sale of a beloved club legend right before the end of June, are you really going to believe the official club's statement? Drop the exact transfer you want us to break down next down in the comments. And hey, if you want more deep dives into football's hidden economics in our next explainer, you already know what to do. Make sure you hit subscribe.